So good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's PD. It's hosted by Renata Peskova. She works as an adjunct lecturer at the School of Education, Faculty of Subject Teacher Education at the University of Iceland. She comes from the Czech Republic. She has a BA degree in andragogy and personal management at Charles University in Prague, and a master's degree from the Universitat Bayreuth, I hope I say that right, with major in intercultural communication, German as a foreign language. After teaching English and German in a compulsory school in Reykjavik for 7 years, she worked on the PhD project School Experience of Plurilingual Students, a multiple case study from Iceland that explored the interplay of linguistic repertoires and school experience of 5 students at an elementary school level who attended heritage language classes in community-based heritage schools. Her research interests include plurilingualism and multilingualism, linguistically responsive and plurilingual pedagogies, language policies, heritage learning in informal, non-informal, and formal settings, and linguistics identities. Her research is complemented by her roles as a co-founder and board member of the Czech School in Iceland and a board member of Mormormal, the Association on Bilingualism. Thank you so much, and we look forward to it.
Well, thank you for the kind introduction, and I'm really happy to see all the familiar faces and also the new faces. Modermal, I was saying, and ILA are sister organizations. So we have a long-standing relationship. But without more ado, let me share the screen and start my presentation. The title today is Who Are You? Developing Linguistic Identities. But there will be special focus on plurilingual pedagogical approaches, and then in particular in community heritage language schools in our classes, how can we make use of the full linguistic repertoires of our students. These are the takeaways. This is what you registered for, what you signed up for. This is the text that was on the invitation. You will learn how to utilize your students and your own linguistic resources to strengthen the plurilingual identities of your students, to scaffold heritage language learning, and to teach towards a better language awareness and transfer of language skills. At the end of the workshop, you will have a good understanding of the concept of linguistic resources, and you will have learned a few methods to utilize the linguistic repertoire of your students. Instead of an introduction, I would like to tell you about a few recent projects. I'm going to move the buttons a little bit down so I can see all my screen. Heritage Language Education Network, represented by Gisi. Multilingual Cafe, represented by Isabel, and Modermal, represented by me. And then one more person, independent scholar from Ireland, organized a conference in the fall. Folk Europe is a new coalition of coalitions, and it was very successful effort to connect the coalitions working in Europe, similarly to what they have in the USA. They have the coalition of coalitions, and they join and make statistics and have overview and support all the different language schools and coalitions working across the states. So we are starting a little effort of Folk Europe, trying to map the heritage language coalitions such as Modermal and others in Europe. And together also with the partners from the US, we developed this document, International Guidelines for Professional Practices in Community-Based Heritage Language Schools. And I just wanted also to draw your attention to this, because this is a document that that can help heritage language schools to see where they stand, how they are doing in achieving some professional standards in their heritage language teaching. And we had Nina collaborating there, and some other people. So this is online, and I encourage you to take a look, and maybe you will find some inspiration there for your heritage language school. Okay. Now, this is what we did in 2021. And I know that some of you have listened to me then. We were talking about identity text. That was the primary goal of the session then, to learn about identity text and how to use the linguistic identity of our students. So we had a list of tools that I introduced to you, and I hope that you could make use of some of them at least. Today, I will tell you about the research that I did, school experience of plurilingual students. And there are also some concrete ideas for heritage language teachers and schools. So it will not be too theoretical, but it will hopefully give you some ideas how to collaborate and how to use the linguistic repertoires of your students and your own. And the message, one of the messages of the research was that plurilingual pedagogies or plurilingual approaches to teaching could be beneficial for the students as opposed to strictly separating the languages. I will talk about pedagogical translanguaging, language awareness, cognates, revise the language rainbow with one slide, revise the identity text, but this time it will be from the point of view of the plurilingual pedagogies. And then finally, a language portrait. And let's see how much time we have to actually draw the portrait and try it out on our own skin and enjoy actually drawing and creating it. So at this point, I would like you, because you're all on your computers, to go to the site menti.com and enter this code. Right? I'm going to copy the code into the chat. And the question that I would like you to answer is, what languages are in your language repertoire? That means all of the languages that you understand or speak. You would enter them, and we would have this huge, hopefully, I think, cloud of languages. And I just wanted to point out, I know there should be a capital letter in front in the beginning of the languages, but the program simply changed it into small letters. So it looks a little weird. But please go to Menti. Please enter all the languages and dialects that you understand and speak. And I'm going to click this link, and we will see the live results as your answers are coming in. So let's hope it works. It should work. The languages that are there, they are my languages. When I was trying it out, I entered languages that I learned at some point during my life. So I'm hoping there would be many, many more. Give you a bit of time. Yeah, that's right, menti.com. You managed, there's also a link that you can click, that's right. Instead of entering the code, I can also copy it in the chat, but I think you just did, right? I'll give you a bit of time. And that's right, you got it right. No, there is the 5TG, yep, exactly. Grace, thank you. So let's see if it works. Let's see if you're entering entering languages and if they appear. This is a nice tool to use with students online to make students active, especially the older ones who can easily enter addresses and words. So you can also think of other use of this tool. Please take off, unmute yourself and tell me if you have entered languages so that we see if they are actually appearing or not. I don't know if I have to refresh, maybe.
I entered mine. I don't know if they showed up.
Okay. Yes. See,
Yay, there they are.
Yeah, I refreshed, and I can now see some of the new languages that that appeared. Give you a little bit of time. I think this cannot be all, or you can just tell me to go on if everybody has entered. Now I'm not sure. I don't want to. I don't want you to miss the opportunity to try this out on your own skin. So we have some very interesting languages here, like Nevari and Malay and San Giovanese, Marathi. Very nice. Let me refresh once more, and I will share this word cloud with you later on, right? So that you can maybe use it somehow. Buna Ziua. Very, very interesting. Okay. So let me go on. I have one more because this is kind of a game, right? This is nice. There is another Menti. Now you need to enter another code or the other link. And I want you to tell me which language do you teach or which languages do you teach. So this will probably take a little shorter time because we know more languages than we usually teach. These are, again, my languages here, English, Czech, and Icelandic. I teach or have taught these languages. I'm also going to paste the voting link in case you want to use that. Here. Okay. So let me click the link to the live results and see what languages you teach. Okay, Nepali, Hindi, Slovak, Czech. That's right. I think there would be much fewer here than in the first cloud because our language repertoire is much larger than the number of languages that we know perfectly or well enough to teach them. Okay, let me refresh, see if something comes in. Okay. So thank you so much for this. I thought that was a nice tool. I have actually not been using it a lot before, but I also enjoyed making it. It doesn't take too much time. And I think it's fun because it makes you kind of engage. There's also the QR code. I forgot to say that you could also scan the QR code and that would bring you to the same voting page. Now, I have prepared one more poll, and this time it's a Zoom poll, and I have never used this before, but I'm going to use it right now. And I just want a yes or no answer from you this time. I want you to tell me when you're teaching the heritage language, if you are using only your heritage language, such as I teach Slovak, I never use a word of English or Icelandic. I only use Slovak in Slovak heritage language class. So I will launch this and it should appear on your screen, and also the results should be just coming in as you vote, right? So do you use only heritage language in your heritage language teaching? We have 7 answers, 8 answers, okay. 9 answers. I don't know how many we are, but that would be approximately the number of participants, I think. So I see that the vast majority is kind of flexible, that you are probably using a bit of the majority language or some other language that you feel you need to use, right, in the teaching. This is interesting. I'm going to close the poll now. Share results. I don't know how I'm sharing the results. So I'm just going to make the screen big again. Thank you for this. And I hope this was fun for you, being a little active in a workshop. Move the, okay, line down, and let's go on. This was my research, school experience of plurilingual students, a multiple case study from Iceland. And usually conclusions come in the end, but I just wanted to share the conclusions with you straight away. And especially the yellow ones, so you don't need to read too much of the slide. But I came to the conclusion that students' plurilingualism or the linguistic repertoire is always active, also in monolingual situations. That means that when we teach heritage language and we only use heritage language, the other languages in the children's brains, they are still active and activated at all times. Oops, that should not happen. And all languages in the linguistic repertoire of the students, well, in this case, of course, the students in my study, all the languages were important for the students, not only the majority language, not only the heritage language, all of the languages in the linguistic repertoire mattered to them. They were somehow connected with their languages. And they needed to be able to reflect that in their learning spaces. So they had the need to use their languages actively. Okay, now it's telling me to move on. A little bit about Iceland. We are multilingual, very few inhabitants compared to other countries, slightly over 350,000 people altogether in the North Pacific, somewhere between Greenland and Scotland. And we have the language Icelandic and sign language, but we have some very nice policies, policy documents and strategies that say that bilingual children, plurilingual children should maintain and develop their languages. Of course, the Convention on the Rights of the Child is a part of our legal system. It's been legalized. And it says that the children have the right to maintain and use their languages. And it's also in the national curriculum. But altogether, we have over 100 languages spoken by the communities and children in preschools and schools. The research questions were these. So I was thinking about how the linguistic repertoire, how all these languages of the students somehow mirror in the school experience. And by school experience, I don't only mean the compulsory school, but also heritage language school, because my kids in the study, they were all visiting the heritage language schools on Saturdays that are taught within Modermál Association. And today I'm just going to look a little bit more into the third sub-question, how do educators reflect and build upon students' resources? And by the resources, I mean in particular linguistic resources. And these were the key concepts. And I'm not sure, it's always good to define concepts so that we understand have the same understanding of what we are saying, but I don't want to go into too much theory. So plurilingual student basically is anybody who has more than one language in a linguistic repertoire. And linguistic repertoire is the sum of all languages, also the ones that I only understand, that I know only to a small extent. It's a sum of all languages. And you could say that we have a lot of languages. Somehow passively, we know a few words from many languages. The school experience is educational experience that is related to achievement, success, but also to well-being. And the school experience takes place in all different learning spaces, such as compulsory schools, heritage language schools, and also the homes and other spaces, such as libraries. You know well what community heritage language school is. And as I said, the resources would be linguistic in my study, but not only those. And here are the theories, and I'm not going even to read it, but the characteristics of all of these pedagogies and theories is that teachers should be sensitive to students' individual needs, build on their cultural and linguistic resources that the students bring into the classroom. And I add also into the heritage language classrooms that we should aim at providing equitable access to education to all students and support them and empower them so that they can take part, participate in the schooling, and they can achieve their goals, their potential. So a lot of different pedagogies in the past, but they would have these similarities. I wanted to go a little bit into the concept of translanguaging because later on, after the coffee break, we would be talking about pedagogical translanguaging. So you must have heard the term. I think, I'm sorry, this keeps jumping up. I didn't know that was this timing. I will try to fix it in the break. But translanguaging is a term that originally comes from Wales, but Garcia, Kanakarajak, and many researchers have taken it up. It's very popular. And it basically means dynamic plurilingual educational practice that incorporates students' plurilingual competencies. So it's the opposite of rigidly separating languages. Like now we have French class, so we only use French. Now we have German class, so we only use German. Right? So this is the opposite. This is dynamic, flexible use of languages with a purpose of learning, of education. It entails a constant adaptation of linguistic resources in the service of meaning making, communicating, and learning. And there are principles of heterogeneity, collaboration, learner-centeredness, language and content integration, language use from students up, experiential learning, and local autonomy and responsibility. So these are all concepts that would be worth looking into in more detail, but we won't, not in this session. But to sum it up, the main concern of translanguaging is effective communication by activating all the linguistic resources of an individual.
Renata,
yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I ask you to tell me anyway, what is the difference between translanguaging and code switching?
Yes, yes. Of course, this is a question that linguists would pose. So translanguaging has this underlying idea that in the brain, the languages are all connected, like they're in one place. They're not compartmentalized. So we are looking at a person as inherently plurilingual, you know, whereas the code switching, which is a similar practice in a way, is seeing the languages as separated. So that is one of the main differences as I see it. And thank you for that question. Code switching is used for various purposes. For example, to express emotions, you know, because maybe we can easier express emotions in our mother tongue than in foreign language. We can try to have a secret conversation, so we would switch to the code that other people don't understand. That's what I can do with my son. You know, when we are in the Czech Republic, we can speak Icelandic, and when we are in Iceland, we can speak Czech. So there are different purposes, different reasons for code switching. But I think translanguaging is more, it has different kind of underpinnings, theoretical underpinnings. There is also this empowerment idea behind that, and looking at the person as plurilingual identity, plurilingualism as a norm, you know, not comparing the level of languages, or not comparing yourself to the native speaker ideal somehow. Translanguaging, the understanding is that it is natural, it is normal that you have different competence in different languages. So you're not comparing yourself with the monolingual native speaker, right? So there are different aspects of it. I hope I answered so that you could somehow have some understanding. This is my understanding of the difference. A good question. I would have hated to get it at my defense, and that was one I was really preparing to get, but I didn't, luckily. Anyway, just to be more concrete at this point, these were the students in my study. They had different heritage languages, and they were between ages 9 and 12. These names are pseudonyms, not their real names. And this is how a case looked. I took 2 interviews with a student. They drew also the language portrait. That's the tool that we will do at the end of the session today. I took an interview with a heritage language teacher, class teacher, and a parent, or both parents of the student. And I just listed these resources, students' resources and teachers' resources, because they are such an important part of what we are talking about, building on students' cultural and linguistic resources. What I basically found in my study was that teachers often build on their own resources, but they didn't know about the resources of their students. Sometimes they didn't know what languages the children spoke at home. They didn't know about those languages. They didn't know what level the students had in those languages. So they did not purposely, strategically build on students' resources. But they did use their own resources, of course, to make good teaching. I have a few quotes here from my students, but the important parts are the bold lines that are on top, because these are the points, the kind of learning points I take from these quotes, right? And on each slide, you would have a language portrait of the student that I'm talking about. So this one was Erak, whose heritage language was Albanian. And you can see that he has 4 languages in his language portrait. A little bit of Danish in his head, but all the other languages are taking quite a large space in his body. So his teacher, his class teacher, was interested to know about heritage language school. And Valon, his heritage language teacher, was interested to know what's happening in the compulsory school. So what I take from there is that this mutual interest and knowledge about the compulsory school and heritage language schools is to the benefit of the students. And I would certainly want that there was more mutual knowledge and communication between compulsory schools and heritage language schools. Martina, her heritage language was Lithuanian. You can see her language portrait, she also has a bit of Polish there that she knew passively from a relative, and English and Danish. But the largest parts are Icelandic and Lithuanian. They're almost the same. You can tell or interpret that the importance of these two languages in her life was equal, both Lithuanian and Icelandic. And her teacher in the school said, when I found out that Martina's heritage language was Lithuanian, I could teach her differently. I could explain words to her. I understand why she doesn't understand words, because Martina was so good at hiding Lithuanian from her teacher that the teacher actually didn't know for quite some time that she was bilingual, plurilingual. I usually use the term plurilingual because there are more than two languages. And again, there is different ideology behind the word plurilingual. So here is Safira, who was quite amazing with Thai as a heritage language. She left out a lot of empty space in her arms and legs for the languages that she was going to learn in the future. You can see on her right hand, she has like a different color on each finger. And she made this effort to learn the languages of her friends. So she had a friend who spoke Arabic, so she would learn to say, hello, what's your name in Arabic? And she knew something in Chinese, and she loved Japanese, and she had a friend from Turkey. And so she was very keen on learning languages. She was very proud of her origin, and she was very interested in continuing her heritage language study. So she was taking tests from Thailand and learning the literacy in the language. And her classroom teacher, he allowed her basically to show this pride in her origin in the classroom. She could show Thailand on the map in the classroom. She would not be afraid talking about where she comes from, and she got the space to express herself in a safe space. And then Paul, the class teacher, was also talking about, he says a quick fix, but basically it was a very nice idea. He had a student who spoke Polish and he could not easily translate English to Icelandic, which were both new languages. And so he allowed the student to go through Polish. He said, first translate it to Polish and then to the other language. And so he was building on the language resource of the student to help him take a test. But he said there was no strategic decision. It was a quick fix. So, of course, implication, there should be more thought through strategies. Here, this is about the recognition and inviting representatives of the compulsory school and the ambassador to a graduation ceremony from the Thai school. The Thai students at the end of the school year were getting certificates, and the director of the school invited representatives of the kids' compulsory school and the ambassador, and they came. And that's a kind of recognition that the children need so that they get more empowered and maybe more willing to continue learning. Jackson had Polish as his heritage language. And there was wonderful communication with the parents. So he's just an example of that. The parents were always ready, especially the mother, to assist with learning both the heritage language and the school language. So there was this wonderful collaboration that was for the benefit of the student. Then he was so lucky with his teachers, because both his heritage language teacher and compulsory school teacher had qualifications, that they were educated in multiculturalism, second language education, special needs education. So they were the best examples in my study of kind of strategic use of languages. For example, Anna says she was working in a compulsory school, but she was teaching in the Polish school as well. And she said, for example, we take a game that the children know in Icelandic and we play it in Polish. So she's building on their resources. She's building on their knowledge from the compulsory school, and she is using it in the Polish class. And both Ertla, the class teacher, and Anna, they kind of knew about the school system. They showed interest. They supported all the linguistic repertoires with words and deeds. Anna encouraged, Ertla encouraged parents to bring their children to heritage language schools, for example. She was showing interest in their heritage language learning without putting pressure on them, but she did, and that's a lot of empowerment for the children. They were mixing children in the classroom into groups so that they learn to collaborate with anybody in the group. Mixing and grouping is a large part of these flexible pedagogies, so that you learn how to work with everybody, you meet and get to know everybody, you're creating a good atmosphere in the classroom, as well as students learn to support each other through that work, also changing activities quite quickly, etc. So a lot of understanding in these classes. This is again about the communication, but actually this is interesting because maybe you know, if children are dyslexic, they are dyslexic in all languages, not only in one language. So Anna was asked, when some of her students were undergoing the diagnostic process, to write some kind of a letter, an evaluation of her students' Polish, if she noticed some signs of dyslexia in Polish, because that would help in the diagnostic process. So this is an example of how the collaboration was actually very practical, fruitful with the experts. And finally, Clara, she was very cheerful. She put a smiley face on her language portrait. She had 3 languages. Spanish was the heritage language, but she was really trying to learn English because she was going to an English speaking school the next year. So there was a lot of effort and strategic effort. The family language policy placed that huge focus on learning English. But she was communicative. She was very outgoing, and this communication skills, they would show in all her languages. Her personality was outspoken and cheerful in all these languages, and she had really good knowledge of those languages. And please look just at the yellow parts, so you don't have to read too much. But I'm trying to move the bar. So basically, I spoke with 5 heritage language teachers and 5 class teachers, and with 2 exceptions, they did not systematically or strategically build on students' language repertoires, on their plurilingualism. They did not include the other languages in some strategic way to teach the children. Okay. And I do recommend at the end that teachers, and by that I mean also heritage language teachers, all the educators need to show respect to the plurilingual identities and plurilingual needs of their students. Just being aware that all these students have those linguistic repertoires, competencies, and that they are closely connected with their languages. And this was the theoretical part. Now comes more practical part after the break. But do you have any questions at this point? I hope it wasn't too overwhelming, but I thought there were a lot of good ideas there that you could take away. Well, you can always drop the questions in the chat as well, right? You can bring up questions at any point. Don't hesitate to interrupt. Yes, you're on mute.
So I have a question for everybody in the group. Do you have students that do speak more than English and their heritage language in your classrooms? For example, in our heritage language school, we have at least a third that speak a third language because they're grandparents. So they have two sets of grandparents. One set of grandparents speaks one heritage language, another set of grandparents speaks another heritage language, and then within their immediate family, they also speak English. So we hear a lot of the, I want to say translanguaging, and that's why I asked about the code switching, because a lot of times what our students are doing now, because they are more able to use their Italian, they're actually infusing in their Portuguese or their Spanish mid-sentence while they're using their Italian. So they'll say something like mia abuela casa, you know, so which basically is their grandmother is at home.
My kids are trilingual because I put them in French immersion. So I usually hear sentences like, Christoph, prosím ťa, bring me that cahier, which means that every single word is from different language. But it's fine, I don't correct them. And the same we hear very often during our online school, because we are connected with Slovaks in Quebec, in Montreal, then in Slovakia as well. And we have kids that speak 4 languages, and you can see them mixing, but there is only one parent teacher who is trying to fix that language with grammar. He's very precise, and sometimes we have to talk to him not to do that because it is discouraging kids. But most of our other teachers are very flexible and they understand what they are trying to say. So it is basically it goes with the flow. We let them to be plurilingual.
Yeah, I'm glad you're saying this, Nina, because focus on grammar, focus on language is totally different from focusing on the speaker and on the communication, right? So in language teaching in general, I think the tendency is to move away from teaching grammar systems towards communicative teaching and placing much more focus on meaning making and mediation, for example, which is not the same as translation, but goes beyond translation, mediation of meaning between different languages. And then there is a difference also. You were talking about translanguaging, and after the break, we would talk a little bit about pedagogical translanguaging. And that would mean that we are using it for teaching something strategically, that we plan for translanguaging in order to teach children something, right? Not this spontaneous translanguaging that we are talking about, because our children and students are all inherently plurilingual, but it can be grabbed and used, right? I got a message from Grace, right, that she would like to do a land acknowledgement, and I'm sorry we don't do it in Iceland, but please go ahead and do it on your side.
Yes,
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry, I am late. I actually had it on my calendar for 7 for some reason. So anyways, as a part of an introduction on any seminars or conferences here or meetings here in Canada, we do land acknowledgements now. So this is our land acknowledgement. Edmonton is located within Treaty 6 territory and within the Métis Homelands and Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 4. We acknowledge this land as the traditional territories of many First Nations, such as the Nehiyaw, the Nestle, Nakotasiw, Anishinaabe, and Niitsitapi. Introduction. Thank you.
Right. There's also a 50-minute video, but you can watch it on your own. But this video is about pedagogical translanguaging. And these scholars are from Basque country, which is between Spain and France, and they have Basque language. and they have studied this and make huge effort, of course, to revive the language and keep it. So I'm going to play the video for you, and please let me know if you don't hear the sound, but you should be hearing the sound.
Galdera da, zenbat hizkuntza ezagutzen dituzuen, hitz egiten dituzuen, edo ulertzen dituzuen ere. Bale? Bai?
Etxean hitz egiten dut gaztelania eta euskera. Eskolan gaztelania, ingelesa eta euskera.
Euskera, gaztelania eta ingelesa. Lau hizkuntza dakizkit, arabiarra, euskera, gaztelania eta ingelesa. Euskera, gaztelania eta ingelesa.
Multilingualism is all around us, but are we making the most of it? Here at the University of the Basque Country, we investigate how to develop multilingual skills in the most efficient way at school and how multilingualism can be an asset for intercultural communication. Multilingualism today occurs all over the world, and it's a fact in schools. In many countries, students have not just one, but a diversity of home languages. All school children need to develop fluency in different languages to gain sensitivity to different cultures. Still, many schools go on to teach languages in a traditional way by isolating languages so that they do not get contaminated.
These are monolingual views, but now there are new approaches. We call our approach Focus on Multilingualism, and it has 3 dimensions. First, we consider learners as multilingual speakers. They are not deficient speakers of the target language, but emergent multilinguals who can communicate in different languages. Second, we look at the whole linguistic repertoire, that is all the languages that are being learned and used both at school and at home. And thirdly, we consider the social context, because every class, every school, and every society is different.
We work in a multilingual context where Basque and Spanish are official languages and all students learn English. But we are convinced our examples are very useful for other contexts and other languages as well. Let's see a few examples of how we can activate translanguaging, moving between languages in schools.
When we look at language awareness, we want children to obtain knowledge about languages. We teach about how languages are used, about awareness of minority languages, intercultural communication, identities, and differences in power, or how languages are valued for business.
For example, as a pedagogical tool, we can use the linguistic landscape of all the signs that are all around us in public spaces. Most of those signs have written text, and often they are in different languages. Children can be asked to collect some of those signs, and then later in class there can be a debate about the way languages are put on signs, which are given more or less importance. Children can learn in that way to read the world, and they become more aware of the way languages are represented and the need to protect some languages.
When we want to activate multilingualism so as to develop metalinguistic awareness, the aim is that the students learn languages in a more efficient way by using resources they already have in their linguistic repertoire.
For example, we can use cognate words that are the same or almost the same in different languages. By learning to identify cognates in a text, students become aware of similarities and differences between languages, and their reading skills can improve.
Nowadays, in many schools, some subjects are taught through the medium of English. It's what we call CLIL, or content-based instruction. That is when content and language are combined in the same lesson. It is interesting. Parents and teachers are convinced that in this type of lesson, students should use only English because otherwise they will become lazy if other languages are used. What they forget is that languages are not enemies, but can become friends that help each other.
So this time the language will be us, okay?
In order to learn, we all need to connect our own prior knowledge to new information. students can learn from their own multilingual resources. By activating these resources, learning can be more effective when learning and using minority languages, national languages or English, in the language class and in the CLIL class.
Multilingualism is all around us, also in the classroom. When we are teaching language or any other subject, we want to make the most of it.
So I'm going to close this. I hope you enjoyed this short video. I certainly did, and there's so many. I hope you can hear me now. I'm not on mute, am I? No, I'm not on mute. Okay, so go back to the slides. Okay. Right, there were so many ideas, and I love this quote: languages are not enemies. Languages can become friends who help each other. That's beautiful, right? But they were using all the concepts that I have been mentioning, and many more concepts that I have not mentioned, such as CLIL, for example, connecting the language and content teaching, right? They were talking about emergent bilinguals, kind of not having that deficit view of a student who is compared to the native speaker, some ideal native speaker, but they are who they are. They are developing their linguistic repertoires, and that's positive. And they were also mentioning linguistic landscapes, for example. That means how the languages are represented in the environment, for example, within the building of the school or in the city on the streets. Are they visible? Are they presented officially? Are they in graffiti? Are they in labeling of the shops? What does it tell us? And I loved them talking about learning in more efficient way, because this is the goal of the teaching, right? That we help our students to learn in more efficient ways. And one of the reasons why we would use mother tongue or another language to promote understanding, to explain things, to practice certain things, it's because it builds on what the students already know. There used to be a method called direct method, practiced by language teachers not so long ago, and that was about only using the target language. And that means that no matter what you talked about, you had to try to explain it in the target language. You can imagine that if you start talking about some abstract words, abstract concepts, that explaining them can be very hard, instead of rather just saying the word in the language the students already understand. They know the concept, but they need to learn the new word for it in a new language. So many ideas behind pedagogical translanguaging. And I think what we are going to talk about now, it can all be under the umbrella of pedagogical translanguaging. So we saw on the slide before, translanguaging is drawing on linguistic repertoire to learn, to make meaning, and to communicate. And part of this is the language awareness, of the metalinguistic awareness. In the little quote on the bottom, it says that this is a kind of mature stage of knowing a language that doesn't start developing until around age 8. At that time, children would enjoy puns, enjoy language games, word games. They would be more aware of the language as a system. They can more think about the language in abstract terms, and they can start comparing languages. Comparing the languages is one of the methods that we would be using in a bit, trying to be active again a little bit. So what we aim at is to developing children's sensitivity to forms and functions. We do teach grammar and the system as well, alongside with communicative competence. But when the students learn to reflect on the language by themselves, that gives them a certain tool in language learning, right? If we are aware of different languages, it can also improve our attitude towards language learning. We become more effectively involved in language learning. We can also better understand challenges. But I think this is a very broad area, just knowing how language works and how we can use it will help us learn it, right? Like for what purposes we are using language, in what situations, how is it different? How is it different when we speak with different people? How is it possibly different when we speak with foreigners, etc.? Just knowing about language and playing with the language is important. And cognates are one of the tools or well, it's not a method really. Cognate is when words in two languages share meaning, are similar in spelling or pronunciation, right? You would know that English and Spanish have a lot of cognates, but also false friends that are not cognates. Wikipedia says usually these words either have the same etymological origin or they are borrowings. They are borrowings from another language. So just to activate you a little bit, I would like you again to use the Menti. This is the last time we are using it today. And I'll put the code in the chat again, the link, and I would like you to just write the word sun in your language and see if we can compare, if it is similar to other languages. So let's enter menti.com once again. And I'm going to open the live results. There is the QR code. There is the link that we can use as well. And just one word, write sun in your language. And then let's become a little language experts and compare, see how it is similar or not similar. And this is, of course, what I entered before this session. So here is the cloud, the word cloud. How do you say sun in your language? And we should see at least the 3 words that I entered. We already have more suns coming. Okay. So there is Surya and Surai. I wonder what languages they are. Feel free to explain. We have Surya, Soare, and Surai, right? And then there is this different alphabet. It also starts with S, soy, something.
So let me explain that. So
yes.
Surya is actually in one of my peer here. Her name is Sarmila, and she's a teacher. And I'm principal, and then I enter because I'm also an IT guy, so I know how to convert those things in Nepali language with the Su and Yer, Surya, kind of like that. It's in Nepali language. So Surya is actually the same thing she has mentioned, but she don't know how to do it. So she typed in kind of English letter, basically. It's the same thing.
Thank you. But we still have at least 3 languages that say Soare, Surya, and Surai. I don't know what you think, but I think these are very similar. They have S in the beginning, then a vowel, right? A U or O, and there is this R as well. So can you tell me which languages these are? Nepalese, and how about the Surai and Soare?
To my understanding, Surya is basically the same with the Surya in Nepal language are written in the brown color. And the Suraj, S-U-R-A-J, maybe is in Hindi, I guess. But he or she might not know how to answer in typing in the Hindi language, probably.
Yeah, I know. I'm refreshing. Okay. So we have a few more sons. So what are you thinking? Is this not fascinating? I mean, to anybody from very young children, just looking at the first letter, you know, when you take son or mother usually starts with M in all languages. So just bringing attention to simple details, but then we can also go into prefixes and suffixes and, you know, more complicated word structures, sentence structures. But this also tells you and your students how languages are related, right? It shows you how you know, maybe words from similar language families would be more similar to each other than words from different language families. And then you can explain about language. You can say that there are different families of languages and which they are and how they developed and what languages belong to them. And this is also a nice way of acknowledging the languages that students speak, right? But I think it's also interesting for the atmosphere, for the mutual recognition, to have students learn a word or two in their friends' languages. Nina, you don't have to raise hand. You just jump in.
Sorry, I want you to be polite. Yeah, this is really fascinating. And right now I'm on the committee and we are inviting a person, indigenous person who speaks Anishinaabe, and he explores the connection between the land and language. So basically their language has a lot to say about the plants and how they heal. So the knowledge that was lost for centuries is now being revived via language. So the connection between biodiversity and indigenous languages is more than we are, it's stronger than we were aware of. And it's so fascinating to look at languages and biodiversity and conditions of this planet. It's just, there is something that we were not aware of, and it's just really fascinating field. So I would just say that this, what we see, you know, the names of the birds tell us something already.
Language and culture are very tightly connected, and many decades ago there were scholars who started exploring actually how our vision of the world is connected with the language. That, you know, you have definitely heard about the colors and words for snow in the Eskimos, or, you know, people who live in the north, but there are so many examples and it's fascinating. And I see that there are raised hands. Please just jump in, contribute. Go ahead.
Okay, you were talking about the cognate words. That's very, very important in the Filipino language. And I know this is very controversial now back in the Philippines, our country of origin, because still the people who are purists still want Tagalog to be our national language. But the Filipino language really is the one that uses all the cognate words. An example is what you have shown here with the sun. We use a lot of cognate words from Spain. Say, for instance, mesa is for table, and we call it mesa as well in the Philippines. Cilia, kusina, and all sorts of things. But our purest Tagalog speakers will not want that. And they would say, no, that is not Filipino language. It is Spanish. So then there is still to this very day a controversy. And I know, if you remember, in Iceland, they did not really want to teach Filipino language, but they want to teach their own languages. So there is the Cebuano, the Ilocano, and so on, because they want to have their own pure language rather than having cognate words that we have in French, in Spanish, in English, and so on. But you are very right, Renata, because the children learn it faster when they have a correlation of a word, like mesa. Well, they know that's stable right away because some of them are also taking Spanish, or Celia, or Cocina, and so on. So I really, really believe in teaching cognate words to the children in order to be able to up their strength in learning the language. So thank you for that. Thank you for that heads up.
Thank you, and nice to hear you again. Before I move on, I would like to know what languages are Araf and Ravi, because obviously there is a similarity there. It's different from all the other words. What languages are they?
Arau is Filipino.
And Ravi?
Arau is Filipino. That is very Tagalog.
And then there is a brown word, Ravi. What language is that?
So
I didn't know that.
So that one is from Hindi language, and it's pronounced like Ravi.
That's amazing, right? You see the similarity. It's a W and V, but there is some relation there. And then also when I used to teach English, I was teaching about false friends, and that's words that seem to be similar, but they have different meanings. So that's also a way to access this. But just by looking at this and comparing, I just realized that one of my acquaintances, whose name is Soraya, probably her name means sun, and I didn't know that before. So there's a lot we can learn from comparing languages. And I have this next slide. This is something I showed a year ago, language rainbow, but now I am showing it as a way of, as a practical idea, how to use these cognates, the idea with cognates in your teaching. At some events of ILA where children from different heritage language groups meet, you would have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here are 7 words, and that's the first column. So you would have words like son, mother, father, language, whatever you choose, and then children and or visitors, participants would write their language on the same color, always the same word. If I'm saying it in a complicated way, the sun would be, for example, in different languages on all the red tickets, right? And mother would be on all yellow tickets in different languages. So this is kind of a language rainbow. You can see many words, how they are written in different languages. And this is very visual. And you engage everybody. So this is something that can stay on the wall for the rest of the year, right? But it could also be documented. So this is a nice way of how to use these cognates so that they become visible. It's an activity, very engaging and beautiful activity. Identity text. Now, I apologize to people who have heard this before, but you're looking at it now from different perspective. You're looking at it as a tool to build on the resources, the language, cultural, knowledge resources that students bring into the class, right? So identity text is any kind of text. It could be a song, it could be a story, it could be a PowerPoint, it could be multimedia, any kind of text, right? Identity text is a text that is related to one's person, where we express our identity in a way. So it draws on personal resources and builds on previous knowledge. And it affirms the plurilingual identities, because the identity text can be used, or I mean written or created in different languages. It could be bilingual, it could be trilingual, it could be, as many languages as the students want to involve. It's student oriented, it's culturally responsive, and you know how people like to talk about each other usually. It kind of encourages very active participation. As a pedagogical tool, it helps us to create learning communities where students learn about each other, because after writing and creating the text, and the text could be spoken or written, as I said, or any other form, the text is presented to an audience, to the classmates. Sometimes it could be parents and grandparents who are invited to a school event, or these stories can be published in a book and given to grandparents. And so usually the authors of the identity texts would get very positive feedback. I mean, it doesn't really happen that you get criticism on something that you invested your identity into. I think we can pedagogically explain to the children what the purpose of these texts is, and I don't think anybody would express any negative comments. Usually, I guess, and that says also in the texts I read about it, usually the authors would get very positive comments, which leads to kind of affirmation of their identities. It's for different ages, different groups, diverse purposes. Timing is flexible. You could take 1 hour for it, or you could take several days writing a long story. And again, it raises awareness about the roles that languages play in individuals' lives. It promotes the discussion, positive discussion about the value of languages and plurilingualism. So here's one from a student I once had. I tend to do these identity texts with my university students, but also with children and adult people in workshops. So here you have a combination of 2 languages, and this task was about, well, I didn't want the students to have to expose their privacy too much, so we wrote about cities, places of our heart. And so this is what this student wrote about, her places of her heart. And this was a PowerPoint presentation originally that I created just to give an example to my students, but it's bilingual. And then if you have your students presented in 2 languages, for example, that means that they are able to show their competence in the other language or in all their languages, and you give the other students an opportunity to listen to languages they don't know, to listen to the pronunciation. They would know the meaning because they have another language then that they understand. So it also raises the metalinguistic awareness, right? We had a little event before COVID where we had readings in the library with very young children, actually, who are totally impatient. They usually don't want to sit too long. And we were reading this book about the hungry caterpillar. There are numbers and there are colors in it. It always eats more and more and it grows, right? It's very, very simple book. And we read this same book, I think 8 times in 8 different languages. And the children sat and listened, and they could understand what was happening, even though they didn't understand all the languages. But it was amazing to see that they were really interested to listen to those other languages, to hear how they sound. And they knew what that meant because they have heard it in the common language for the first time. So that was a very nice event for young children, raising their metalinguistic awareness. And needless to say, the children who understand those other languages, they were very, very proud. And now it comes to the language portrait. Now, as a pedagogical tool, language portrait can be used as an icebreaker, art activity, collaborative activity, written assignment, could be recorded, it could be prepared, or it could be spontaneous. Language portrait, that's the little figures that you saw on my slides in the first part of the session today. And again, language portraits reflect the principles of all these empowering pedagogies that focus on the child as an individual, that want to strengthen their identities, that want to extend their linguistic resources, and they want them to be active participants. This is something some of you have seen before. It's just an example I use to show how this is done. So what you do, and I'm hoping that we do have time. So you are all going to draw your language portrait. What we do, the instruction is take colors, draw a figure, and decide which color will be linked to which language. Maybe you have some reasons why you attribute certain color to certain language. Could be emotional or associations or any reason, right? One of my students said, well, my favorite color is blue and my favorite language is Spanish. So that was decided, right? Or there was a flag that had certain color, and so they used that color for the language. Then you have to decide how large space the language gets in the body. So if it's just on one finger, or in one ear, or just in your brain, or if you attribute it a large space, and where. And it's kind of a playful activity, very imaginative. There's nothing measurable or exact about this. It's your personal, creative, imaginative activity, right? So do you put it in the head because you just learn it at school? Do you put it in your heart because you love it? Or, you know, where do you put it in the body? And then if you want to practice written language with older students, you could have them write the text. You could have them write it in 2 different languages, for example. You could even make an exhibition or make an online book, for example, with the texts in the majority and the heritage language, maybe similarly to the mother language day book that you do. It could be a nice variation, for example. And you could also record this. When I was taking the interviews, I was asking questions about it and the students answered. So we had a dialogue about it. Right. So more instruction. Also dialects have their space here. Any language that you know to any extent. Like even if you don't speak it and you only understand it, or if you have learned it for a year in school and you have long forgotten it, even such language has some space in your language portrait. And this would be the activity of the day, right? So I will give you, I don't know, 5 minutes, 6 minutes to draw this. It shouldn't take too long. And then we would share these language portraits. At least some of you hopefully will have time to share them with the others, show the pictures on the camera and say, this is my language portrait and this is how I attributed the colors, etc. So usually people know, well, people enjoy talking about themselves. I have said this before. People love talking about the languages that they speak. So this is a very enjoyable activity. You realize that this is really fun when you are presenting. There's no reason to be shy. And also for the students, there's no reason to be shy. It's so much fun to talk about languages.
That's right. So
yeah, if I share screen, I can show it for you.
No problem.
You tell us what colors you attributed to the languages and why.
I gave English as a brown and then Nepali as a red because Basically, I am trying to use my own flag color, which is a more of a reddish. And basically we have two different and three different colors in my flag. So I'm using the one of the color of the flag, and English as a kind of very similar color to make sure that it's also kind of very important for me. So that's why I'm trying to use kind of English like in brown and Nepali as a red. So you can find like both of them are very strong color for language. That's I would perceive it.
And do you think you have the same competence in English and Nepali?
I think yes, because I studied English since my childhood and from a Nepali as well. So at the same time, I think I'm pretty much confident with English grammar and Nepali grammar, both of them at the same time. That's why I give them half and half.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Not sure we have time for all of us, but maybe we do. So please volunteer.
I will volunteer. Renata?
Yes.
Okay, I don't have the color, but I will be able to explain it.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be okay?
Yes. Can you show it on the camera? Can you show the picture?
It's not really good because I don't have the colors, but I can. The first thing that I did was my heart, which is supposed to be red, and that is Ilocano, which is my mom's language. And then blue are my arms right here, and that is Filipino, which is the national language. In as much as I always use the Filipino language now with relatives and friends, and English is green, which is for the brain, because it is through English that I am where I am at this point. Then stomach is orange, and that's my dad's language, Waray, which is in the south of the Philippines. By doing so, it's because he was the breadwinner in the family and he was always giving us food. That's one reason why I use that. Now, yellow, I use it for my legs because that's Spanish. And Spanish was the one that started us to become more linguistic in the Filipino, in our Filipino culture. Because back in grade 4, we already started learning the Spanish. So I have 5 languages that I can relate in my portrait. Unfortunately, I don't have any colors. I did not bring it. They're all at the office. But yeah, you're so right, Renata. When you really try to make it as a rainbow, you will know exactly how much feeling you have and the importance of that language in your own self. Just like the heart is still my mom's, but then the green is English. It's because that's where I got my intelligence, maybe being a teacher and so on. And all the different languages helped me to grow the way I am. So if I were to teach this to my students, even in my adult group of different nationalities, it will really be something that they would enjoy, because they'd say, oh yeah, I am from Africa, but I have 5-6 languages in my own country. And so they can portray that. So thank you. And it's nice to see you again, Renata. Thank you.
Thank you. I love the metaphor with the breadwinner and the stomach. I have not heard that one before.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's take a few more. Yes, Isha, go ahead. You are on mute. You need to unmute so we can hear you.
I use a lot of colors. I don't know too much of the other languages, but the English is in my daily life and in my hands. Most of my communication is in English, but Ukrainian is in my heart, and again, communicating with people I associate with. My stomach is filled with different languages because I learn the language of foods wherever I travel, and travel is represented in my legs. I love to travel, and I pick up words in my travels. So they're all multicolored as well. And that's it.
Fantastic. Fantastic. You have rainbow legs and of course
a rainbow stomach.
Yeah, and learning through food, that's amazing because there's a lot of feeling there, a lot of emotions, right? Thank you. Yeah. More people.
Okay, I'll go.
Thank you.
So this is my funny posture. So the red color, that's for Czech. That's my mother's language, right? And I chose red because I love that language. I'm proud. I know the language, and of course I love my country. So, and I put it in the legs because I feel so like stabilized, or how should I say that in English? Like, of course, confident, right, in that language.
You're grounded.
Yeah, grounded maybe, yeah. Thank you. I also, when I grew up, I was listening a lot to Slovak language. I don't know really why I chose a purple color. I'm not sure really, and I put it in my arms. And that's another language that until today I don't speak it, but I can understand it very well. Speaking is different, right? You know, Nina, right? If I should speak it, it would be very hard for me, but I can understand it perfectly. And I still listen to some songs and movies that I can watch. Then of course, English is, yeah, I use it now every day, and I put it in my head and in my hands. So yeah, that's I think Josephine, she used English too for her head. Then there are some languages I used to learn as a kid and teenager. So there's Spanish. I chose green for Spanish, and I put it in my stomach because I have kind of mixed feelings about the professor that I had to teaching me. I read Italian. That's another different kind of purple. And that's, I don't know, when I see again the professor, I see purple. There's also Russian that I learned at school, and I loved that language. It was easy for me to pick it up and learn. So it's orange. And then in my heart, that's my special language, even though I never learned it well. It's French, and I put blue because the teacher who taught me the language, he's not here anymore in this world, but I always, you know, I love to remember him, so I know he's somewhere in a heaven. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I hear so many things when you're speaking. When I was analyzing the language portraits for my thesis, I used categories of competence, affiliation, and expertise. This is how we express our linguistic identities, right? We say how well we speak the language. I speak it a little bit. I understand it perfectly. You know, I learned it for a year. I'm grounded in it. It gives me my, so, you know, you express competence in different ways, how well you speak or master the language. And then the affiliation, you actually like it, love it. You have mixed feelings about it, right? You have all kinds of feelings about it, about your languages. And so
yeah, I wish, I don't know, I can still maybe find the one when we did it before with the, you know, with the PD session with you the last time. I still might have the person somewhere. It would be nice to compare.
It would be so interesting.
But I think I'm sure I use the same spot for French. I'm not sure about the color, but definitely the heart spot, but I'm not sure about the rest. I still try to find it. It would be interesting to compare how I saw it that time and how I see it now.
And then there's the inheritance when we speak about the language portrait. My mother spoke the language, my father spoke the language. I come from there, you know, I come from that country. So that's the inheritance, right? So these are the ways of expressing linguistic identity. But I also wanted to come back to translanguaging, because we spoke about translanguaging before, and talking about food, you know. Imagine when you buy some, I don't know, soup in a parcel, and it just happens, it doesn't have the cooking instruction in the language that you use. So you need to read the instruction in 4 other languages, right? But not in the language that you really know. So you need to kind of wake up all your cognates and all your background knowledge to figure out the recipe for the food that you bought, because the instruction is just not in the language that you happen to know. That happens quite a lot in Iceland somehow. It's in Danish, Norwegian, Swedish, and Finnish, but not in Icelandic. And then you need to try to connect all these meanings and figure it out. Also, I was thinking with Czech and Slovak, you know, we often speak our language and listen to the other language. Like I speak Czech, Nina speaks Slovak. We understand each other. We never mix languages. I always speak Czech and Nina always speaks Slovak, right? That's translanguaging as well. There are different, different forms. Yes, yes.
I have a niece who was born when Czech Republic and Slovakia were separated as 2 countries. And my niece and nephew, they do not understand Czech so well as we do. For me, Czech is like Slovak, it's like my language, but for them, it's a foreign language. So I believe that when the countries, you know, beat on their chest and say we are nationalists and we don't want anybody else, and they're close the borders and broadcast only in one language, they are just depriving the people of so much knowledge out there, because we were exposed to Czech language. We could listen to German secretly, of course, during communism. But when the state decides to prefer one and only language, that's, in my view, that's catastrophe. And I can see it in the generation that came next. The Czech language is more difficult to understand for them now.
Mm. Yeah, and you bring in the socio-political and historical context. And of course, languages are connected with politics quite closely, and power and manipulation and reigning and colonizing and all these, you know, different histories that we have. So it's a powerful tool for nations as well as individuals. That's a different issue, but language is, of course, a tool that can be used to manipulate the whole nations, right? You deprive a nation of a language, you deprive them of identity, sovereignty, pride, and you know, it has been used often in history. these kind of practices, punishing kids for using their language physically, even, right, when you were trying to impose the majority language, the language of power. But that's like the opposite of what we are doing. Now we are trying to empower children and lift up all those languages and stop making differences between languages in terms of hierarchies. All languages are valuable, all languages are important, all languages are beautiful, and all these languages are important for the speakers, for the children, for different reasons. And we have just gone through those different reasons. We have 5 more minutes, so I think that's the time for questions and answers, for wrapping it up, unless somebody has a burning desire to share the language portrait. I think we would have time for 1 or 2 more if you wanted to. But otherwise, it's more like maybe thinking about, what do I do with the knowledge that I gained today, and maybe some feelings and some insights. how can I take this with me into my language classroom? What can I actually do straight away? How can I use this in my planning? How can I build on my students' linguistic repertoires in pedagogical ways so that it creates some knowledge and competence?
Can I speak?
Yes, please.
Oh, hi. So what I saw from like the portraits that everybody did is like how close we keep our countries and close to our hearts, and how English, like a common language, helped all of us like to be here today, to have a job. Because I believe like in the majority I saw like either in the head or the hands, even in my picture that I didn't saw it, like English is the one that is helping me to be here right now. So how important is that? Like that was my comment of the pictures like that I saw from everyone. I'm teaching the adults, so I don't really know how to apply this body, but I have to put some food for thought on that, because I know the majority they are Canadians or they have some Greek heritage. So it's going to be kind of tricky for them, but maybe I can find another in a different way, like of what is their favorite color and how they represent parts of their body with that, by teaching the colors and the body parts. I don't know, or kind of food. What is their favorite food? What that goes to the stomach, or like from different countries that they have visited. I don't know. That's some food for thought for now, but thank you so much for today.
Thank you. I'm sure you will figure things out, not only the language portrait, but also the cognates and the translanguaging methods, how to build on Greek, for example, when you teach English, or how to build on English when you teach Greek. There must be tons of Greek words in English, for example.
Oh, yeah. And that's what fascinates them. Like when we tell them like, oh, it's coming from this Greek word, they're like, oh, wow, we never thought about it.
I was fascinated when I figured how many German words are in Czech. I never knew before I started studying German. You know, you don't realize it. You have to, this is kind of a competence. You bring people's awareness to it. It helps them learn the language, understand it better, understand the origin of words, right? So that's something that you would definitely, you know, that would be interesting for the adult learners.
Well, I have a wonderful book for you, Renata. Derek Sayers' Coast of Bohemia, who explains the language in history. I'll send the title to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it says a lot about German and Czech coefficients.
Please, Nina, to me too, send it to me.
Yes, I will.
Or
I
put it in a
enjoyed
chat.
that book a lot, but I haven't read it for a while, so it's a good refresher. While you were talking about it, I'll jump back to it.
But also proverbs, for example, you know, there are so many proverbs that travel across borders, and this is something you can compare. It doesn't have to be only words. It could also be stories or proverbs, like, you know, can you find a proverb that has the same meaning or that has even the same kind of wording? And you would be surprised. There's so many similarities. Well, as teachers, you need to do planning. So keep this in mind when you do your planning next time, and see if it can be smuggled in. Yes, Jitka.
Yeah, I was just thinking to share one idea that came to me. Like when you talk about all the children, right? How proud they were about their heritage language, right? Or even if they spoke just a few words of some other languages. So I had an idea, because I'm teaching the little kids, very like the kindergartens. And sometimes I know that for them now, it doesn't mean much, right? And they still try to speak English, not Czech. But I was just thinking, when COVID is over and more people, even like who don't belong to class can come to class. So I was thinking to invite someone's like a grandpa who speaks Czech, right? Who speaks Czech, and he would maybe introduce himself and he would tell us where he comes from. He would, so maybe the child, right? It would be someone's grandpa or grandma. They would be proud to know that this is my grandpa, grandma, and now look, like he speaks that language. That's why I'm here. So just, this idea, or could be someone's mom or, dad. And they would, they can speak for a bit and say where they come from. When I saw those pictures, when they were born, where they went to school. So something like that. So, so the kids realize, that someone from the family speaks the language and be even more proud of it, or wake up that feeling. So just the idea. Yeah.
Thank you.
And Renata, I also have some thoughts here from what you have presented tonight. Being a Filipino, we were talking about our children not interested in learning the heritage language because it's being stigmatized as something that is of a minority class. So that instead of learning it, they're really embarrassed to speak it, because what's Filipino language? Why will I be speaking when I'm already in Canada? So by trying to use the cognate way, the pedagogical languaging, where the European children have already 5 languages learned by the time they finish high school, that is really something to bring about quite a few of the heritage languages that many of our children are really embarrassed of or embarrassed about, because we're not really the major kinds of languages or the international languages. So with this language portrait, I think the students and even the adults that I'm teaching, as I said, will really love it, because we have to really show to them the importance of their language. And especially for the children, why they do not really want to come to our language school is because, why will I speak Filipino now? I'm already in Canada. And the mother would say, yeah, why should I be teaching my child Filipino when we need to be pure, or we have to be perfect English speakers here in Canada? So you have to really show the importance and the balance of learning more than 1 or 2 languages. And it's really very important, not just for their own mental development, but really intellectually. And at the same time, as we keep on talking about, it's economic as well. That will bring them to France without not being afraid of having to order food in French or in Spain or in Iceland, because then it's not anymore a barrier if they have more than 1 or 2 languages spoken. So thank you for all these beautiful exercises that we can really share with our children. Thank you again, Renata.
Thank you. And I saw Antonella had a hand, right?
I did, because I was just thinking about what Jika had mentioned about having the grandparents come in. So I don't know if any other country celebrates this, but in Italy, there is La Festa dei Nonni. And thanks to Jika, now I have the perfect hook to get those grandparents in. So we can have una Festa dei Nonni and have a nonno or a nonna come in, or a couple come in, God willing, the whole week. So we're going to have a week. Morning and afternoon. That way they can do exactly what you suggested. So thank you. So if any other language school, if your country celebrates what is it? Grandparents' Day. That's what it's called, Grandparents' Day. Please consider it, because at least for our school, our grandparents, they do a lot. They're the ones that bring. They are the ones that usually bring the kids in the morning. They're usually the ones that pick them up. And part of the reason is because of what we've experienced. Their parents were told, don't teach your child your heritage language. They need to learn English. So they lost it, we lost it, but now the grandparents see their grandchildren, and they want that language back, because now, just like as Josephine was saying, now second language, that mother language, those heritage languages are valued because they're economic, they promote cognitive development, and they reaffirm your personal identity, your heritage identity, your family identity. So they are the ones that actually are the ones that even call us to ask about the school, not necessarily their parents. So it's something, so thank you for that. So next September, Marina, we're going to be having La Festa dei Nonni, and God willing, all of this madness is over, we're going to bring them in and have a little festa, so then they can talk about, you know, what they know in terms of the heritage language and speak in the heritage language. That way their grandchildren can be proud, because that's the one thing that we've noticed is the kids are very proud. They're very proud to be able to communicate with one grandparent, even if the parent doesn't understand it. Like, they actually love it. They love when they can speak to their grandparents in Italian, and their parents may not know what they're saying. I mean, they may know what they're saying, but they pretend that they don't know what they're saying. So it becomes like this whole comedic situation.
I have to add on, Antonella. Oh, thank you for saying that. Do you know the reason why we started the heritage language? It's because Sabatino Roncucci, okay, the patriarch of our heritage language, when we were together in 1977, and we were all talking about how will we start a heritage language program, he was the first one that said, this is the first day, or this is the way we will start. We will have to make our children learn our heritage language so that they can talk with their grandmas and grandpas back in their home country. And of course, the University of Alberta, Jean Swasdewski, Olenka Bilash, and Fiona Pelek, they all said, you're right, we have grandparents back home. And that was the cornerstone of our heritage language. Oh, Antonella, thank you. You give me goose pimples for, for Sabatino.
I'd like to thank everyone for attending. I know we had 2 PDs in a week, so hurrah for us that we got 2 wonderful PDs in this week. So Renata, thank you above all for staying up late, for being a party animal, and for doing this amazing PD. Thank you all for participating. I look forward to seeing you again. And thank you so much for all these informative pedagogical techniques that we can use in our classroom to encourage our students, not only for the language piece, but even more about looking into their heart and looking into their soul to really think about who they are at their core, no matter whether it's English or Czech or Polish or Tagalog, whatever language that they feel is who they are at their core. So thank you so much. And thank you to all of you.
And it was really nice being with you again. It's many familiar faces. So I'm sure this is not the last time that I see you, and maybe some of you come to Iceland, or maybe hopefully I will be able to come to Edmonton again.
We will.
Yes.
Would be nice, to come to Iceland.
You're all welcome.